new talk show, Health Matters, with your lovely host, Ugonano CK. On this show, we will be interviewing doctors, pharmacists, nurse practitioners, dietitians, and many other health professionals. Thanks for watching. Hello, and welcome to Health Matters. I am your lovely host, Ugonano CK. Here we have our Dr. Linda Uhegwu with us today. Today we will be discussing stroke. We'll talk about how you get it, how to prevent it, how it affects you, and the treatment. All right, Dr. Linda, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much.
Good. I'm so happy that you're able to be with us again.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your knowledge every time that you come. So let's get it started. All right, so today we'll talk about stroke.
Oh, yes. And there's so much to go over. So, let's just jump right in.
All right, good. So let's define what is stroke. What is a stroke?
Well, a stroke, if you have to really kind of understand the brain. Every organ in the body has vessels where blood flows, and with blood you get oxygen and the nutrients to supply the tissue. And so the brain it's an organ, and it needs blood, it needs oxygen, it needs the nutrients. And a stroke, very simply, is just defined that anything that blocks the blood flow and affects the nerves is basically what we consider a stroke. Now, there are different types of stroke, but anything that blocks or prevents blood flow into the brain, prevents the oxygen, prevents the nutrients, and basically is what we define as stroke.
Okay. So let me ask you, how serious is a stroke in our community? Like, roughly, do you know how many people it affects a year?
Well, just let's take the U.S. for example. I would say about 700,000 people are affected by stroke in the U.S. alone, and about 167,000 actually die from it. So it is a major player, and it's the top 3 of deaths in the U.S. So if you factor in the amount of people in our community who don't know about their health, don't know warning signs, don't know how to modify risks that they may have to have a stroke, then you can also see that our numbers may be higher than some of the other populations of people.
Okay.
So just for the population of people in the U.S. that it affects is almost close to 1 million people.
Oh, wow.
So you have to really take into consideration that this is a very serious matter, and it really does affect health. And so, looking at the numbers, there are several people that can be affected, and there are different ways that they're affected.
Different ways. So what are the different ways that they're affected, or what are the different types of strokes that affect people? Like,
okay, I hear 2 questions.
Let's start with the first one. What are the different ways?
So different ways, like those are like symptoms of stroke. So if you think about the brain, you're like, what does the brain even control? Like my kidneys, they filter everything. My stomach digests food. Well, the brain is basically your livelihood.
Okay.
If you think about the brain, you have the main center of your nerves in the brain, and they are basically what define how you think, your personality, how you communicate, how you learn, how you move, and so you want to write with a pen, you want to pick up a glass of water. Those things are defined by your brain, and the movement is controlled by your brain. And even the sensation of feeling someone's touch is basically from the nerves in the brain. The way that you see, the vision, how you perceive things, those are all part of your brain. So when you really think about what the brain does, and you say that there's an area of the brain that's affected, you can affect any of these types of, or these areas of the brain. So your movement, your perception, your sensation and touch, your vision, your thought process, your personality, your behavior, your emotions, all of these can be affected. And so you really have to take in consideration, if someone has a stroke, then it really depends on where it is, how big of the area is affected, and what side of the brain, what it can actually do. So that's how you really can define what happens when you have a stroke. But I also want to mention that sometimes you can have what we call a warning sign. And that is not general. It's not a stroke, but it's like you're saying. It's the evidence that you're capable of having a stroke before the actual stroke.
And what are those?
So we call those transient ischemic attacks.
Okay, so it's the same as a TIA. I've heard of
Exactly.
that, TIA. Okay.
And that's the abbreviation for
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
uh-huh.
So if you're talking about someone who is at risk of a stroke, if you have a transient ischemic attack, that is the precursor, the warning sign, the siren that's saying your body is at high risk. And this is one of the main things that we say when we see it. We need to address it as swiftly as possible.
How do you know that you're having a TIA?
Well, it's very similar to the signs of a stroke.
Okay.
But the main difference is that when you think about a TIA, the warning stroke, this is when we have a temporary blockage.
Okay.
So a stroke is when you have a complete blockage of blood flow, whether it is blood leaking from a vessel or a blockage in the vessel.
Okay.
Either way, it's a complete block. There's a complete stop in blood flow. Now, when you talk about the warning stroke, the TIA, you're talking about temporary. So even if there was a blockage, that blockage didn't last long enough to cause complete blood flow to stop. And then the signs and the symptoms, you know, the feelings that you have, they only last for minutes to a few hours. Now, when you talk about a stroke, you may not even have symptoms to the point where you can become paralyzed. So those symptoms last not indefinitely, depending on, you know, rehabilitation, things of that nature that we help with, but the symptoms last much longer, more than 24 hours.
24 hours. You know, I remember there was a reporter, I forgot what show it was or what was being covered, but she actually had a TIA on TV. She was talking and all of a sudden her speech became distorted.
Wow.
Right there, and it happened, like you said, maybe a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds, and then she went right back to speaking normally, and then they diagnosed her, like, you just had a TIA. So is that generally what happens? Is it your speech? Like, what are some physical things that happen to your body so that you know, okay, this is not normal, I need to go to the doctor or something?
I think we had a topic before where I discussed that you and I have been living for how many, couple of decades now.
Yeah.
Okay. So we know ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, we know what's normal.
True.
If I see a little thing here and I'm saying to myself, that's not normal because I've never had that. So what is normal to us is normal.
Okay.
So you should know your body.
Yes.
And that's the first sign of caring about yourself and taking your health very seriously. To know your body, to know what is your norm, and then to know when it is abnormal. So what are signs or warning signs?
Yes.
First of all, you can have basically loss of strength. So I pick up the pen and I want to go and I want to write. The moment that I want to do something and I cannot pick up the pen, and it's as if I'm limp, but I'm in my mind telling my hand to pick up the pen.
But you just can't do it.
But I can't. So it's a sudden loss of movement. Even though I'm very capable of moving, you're very capable of moving, we should be able to move because that is normal for us. That is a sign that something is not normal and should be checked out. So you could have you ever sat in the car too long and you get out of the car and you have this tingling in your leg because your foot is asleep?
Yes.
All right. And you can have numbness, like you don't feel so well on that leg. Well, that's also a sign too.
Really?
You can think of. You can have numbness and that tingling of your face, your hand, your leg. You can have it a specific side of your body. But guess what? Your face wasn't on anything to be asleep. Your hand wasn't on anything to be asleep. So that should be a concern for you too. So those are the things that you can look for. Another one, just like the reporter that you mentioned, which is a great example. You have trouble speaking. We know several languages.
Yes.
But when we're communicating with each other, I should understand you and you should understand me. So if I start speaking and you have had no problem understanding me, what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, my words make sense, I'm not slurring, those are some sudden changes
Mhm.
that you should be able to pick up right away.
Okay.
When you're not speaking well, I should be able to pick it up.
Okay.
Because it's a change from the normal behavior you have just shown me. Another thing that some people may have are vision changes. So immediately you go blind in half of your eye, you can't see. Don't sit on that.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead and get that checked out, because that actually may show that that is a sign of a stroke. And you know, some people have had what we call the thunderclap headache. And they describe it as, this is the worst headache of my life.
Really? So would it be worse than like a migraine?
So if someone has migraines, what we also always tell people who have migraines is that, you know, because this is their norm. So migraines can happen very frequently. If your headache changes at any point from what it normally does, oh, I have a headache, I turn off the lights, I feel better. I have a headache, I take Tylenol,
Okay.
I feel better.
Okay.
I have a headache, it has not been better with what I usually do. I have blurry vision, I'm weak in my left hand.
Okay.
Those things show signs that this migraine may not still be a migraine anymore. And it's not normal.
Yeah,
It's not
your normal. Yeah.
So those are things that, you know, you can have some conflicting information, but if you don't have any headaches ever in life, you don't have a history of migraines, then you really need to consider, hey, this headache I've never had, it's the worst headache of my life. And remember, worst headache of my life, you need to get that checked out.
Okay.
And then the most vague of the symptoms that we see sometimes are dizziness. So you
Okay.
can lose your balance, and some people say, well, I tripped,
Okay.
but they have nothing that they tripped on.
Oh, okay.
So, like, how are you tripping over your own 2 feet?
yes, they
It's
don't
not
realize
very
it's
common,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
So, and it's because people don't notice it, or we compensate for anything that happens. Oh,
Yeah, we compensate.
that was just because I was really stressed,
Mhm.
and I just, you know, needed to sleep.
Got it.
And then, you know, end up having a stroke, and, you know, whatever took place from the stroke ends up lasting longer because it wasn't identified early. But those are some of the warning signs that, you know, for a transient ischemic attack and a stroke, they look very similar in the beginning. But when you look at the time frame of how long they last, the transient ischemic attack is less than 24 hours. And it doesn't leave any brain damage. There's nothing permanent from it. It just is a warning that there's an area of the brain that has had a temporary blockage
Okay.
of some sort, a temporary lack of blood flow. And that is a warning sign that needs to be addressed.
So, say that someone gets a TIA and it's a warning sign,
Yes.
like you said, to the bigger stroke. What can we do to try and prevent the bigger stroke, since that's a warning sign and that you're obviously not doing something right, maybe in your diet, or maybe is it stress, or could it be genetic, or like what can you do to prevent like the TIA now graduating to the big CVA?
So 2 questions again.
I'm sorry.
No, I love the questions. Keep them coming. But I think what you're asking are, what are the risk factors? And can we do anything about these risk factors?
Yes.
So let me try to put it in a better perspective. You have risk factors that you can fix, okay? And then you have risk factors that come with who you are.
Okay.
So you cannot fix them, but you can be aware of them.
Okay.
Okay. So let's say, what are risk factors that you mean? A risk factor, you should be able to adjust them. Not always. You can't adjust your age.
Okay.
You are your age, right?
Yeah,
So after a certain age, usually you can have a stroke at any age, depending on what's happening. But usually the common times that we see individuals with stroke are around 65 and older. Okay, so if you're 65 and older, you may be at a higher risk of having a stroke, but you can't change that age.
Okay.
Unless you know, some people lie about the age, that's fine, but you know, time-wise, you
Yeah.
can't change the age, okay? But, so also gender.
Okay.
And it's been actually proven that women, before the menopause, are less likely to develop stroke.
Okay.
But, still again, women still have a higher risk of dying from stroke than men.
Oh, then dying. Oh, okay.
But before menopause, usually early to mid 50s, a woman generally has a less risk of stroke. So you cannot, well, now you can change that, but definitively you can't change your gender so much. So, and also your ethnicity.
Yeah.
Some ethnic groups, some populations of people have higher risk factors, and I'll go into the risk factors that you can adjust.
Okay.
But one of them being high blood pressure. So you can so high blood pressure, you may see it in some communities more than others. So that's one of the things that you can't really change. You can't really change your ethnicity and say that I'm not at risk because of my ethnicity. And then, like you mentioned before, your family history, your genetics, who you are. If your mother and father have had a stroke at the age of 40, and then your younger brother and sister also had a stroke younger than the age of 60.
Higher risk for you to also have a stroke.
You have a history, a family history that gives you at high risk. Can you change that? You can deny your family all you want. You can't change
the history.
So that's something that you definitely is a risk factor that you cannot modify. You can't change it. And if you've had a prior stroke or a transient ischemic attack, a TIA, you can't change that either.
Yes.
So those are the non-modifiable risk factors. And what they mean is that you cannot change that factor. It is there, and what you need to focus on are the risk factors that you can change, which leads me into the next scope of what we need to talk about, which is what are the risk factors that I know I have, but I can change and do something about to reduce my risk of a stroke.
Okay, so we'll stop right there. We're going to go to a break shortly. We'll be on break, and we'll come back and we'll discuss more risk factors and preventative measures of strokes.
All right.
All right, see you soon. Hello and welcome back. For those who are just tuning in, we have been discussing stroke, and I've been here with Dr. Linda Uhegbu. So far we've talked about what a stroke is, the precursor to a big stroke, which is a TIA, and we're currently going to continue talking about the risk factors and how to prevent the big stroke. All right, Linda, so here we go. Let's continue with the risk factors, what we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. So we went over the risk factors that you can change. So we're kind of on the risk factors that you can, because everybody needs to know that. One of the risk factors that we've discussed before is high blood pressure. And what I have actually seen is we are seeing high blood pressure in our younger populations more and more. And whether it is diet or whether it is, other contributing factors, smoking, drugs, whatever the case is, we're seeing a higher number of younger people with high blood pressure.
Okay.
And I can give you an example. There was a young man that I met on a trip that was very nice, polite, had his own business, and I think he was maybe in his late 20s.
Okay.
And when we started discussing, he later at the time found out I was a physician. He was like, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize you're a physician. Oh, I've had a stroke before." And I was confused.
Yeah.
Because he didn't seem as if he had any
Okay.
residual lasting effects. And I asked him, so I asked him his age, and I went into the store. So how is it you've come to the point where you've actually had a stroke at such a young age? Remember the risk factors we cannot change if you've had a prior stroke. So he now says, yes, I had high blood pressure. And I've known since I was age 20 that I've had high blood pressure, and I just never took medication.
Oh.
The concern I had wasn't so much he's had high blood pressure since he was young. I understand that, and you have a doctor who will work with you for that. The concern I had was his lack of involvement in his own care. That is where I feel that we lose the battle. A 28-year-old should never have a stroke.
Yes.
And if we have the ability to adjust the factors that are going on, we can do a lot of benefit. So when you have high blood pressure, don't just dismiss it. Really and truly listen to your doctors, because those factors can be modified, can be adjusted, can be changed. And so if you have something that says, if you want to last from age 20 to age 50, take this medication and prevent a stroke. Or don't take the medication and have a stroke. Which one would you choose?
I'll take the medication.
and take care of your life. Your health matters to us as physicians. Your health matters to your family. And your health should make the most difference and matter to you as the person. So it is not just us giving you all these medications, but it is us wanting to see you have a full and prosperous life. So these are the ways that we want to be able to help if we can, if you allow us. So that's my big thing on high blood pressure, because it's a big factor.
It's a big factor.
And we're seeing more and more of it, and which is a big concern.
And so is it very prevalent with people that have high blood pressure to have TIAs like we were talking about previously?
They can.
Okay.
It's not, I don't know if there's a correlation to say if you have high blood pressure, you can have TIAs, but I know that blood pressure can be up to 50 to 70% of the reasons people have a risk factor for stroke.
For stroke, okay.
So it is a big player. It is truly a big player. One of the other things that people should mention is that your cholesterol. Your cholesterol being uncontrolled is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Some people, I've read family members, reports from the doctor, and they said, yes, the doctor said I will just have a little high cholesterol. You have it, uncle, or you don't have it, uncle. Which one is it?
Exactly.
Did they give you any medication? Well, they prescribed this one. So they're concerned enough about it.
Yes.
And even if you say, Uncle will go run 20 miles a day, at some point you have to start treating what's on the ground and then start doing your own part to
Your own
try
part.
to take care of it. So if someone says your cholesterol is dangerous, take this medication, and you say, well, I know myself, I'm just going to exercise and drink a certain type of plant juice and I will be fine.
Okay, so we're going to round up here. We can't cover everything today, but before we end, I would like to thank my lovely doctor, Dr. Linda Uhegwu. I really appreciate the time that you spend with us with this show because we cover so many topics that our community really needs, and I really appreciate that you take time away from your busy schedule to sit here with us and talk about the issues that will help our community. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Linda, thank you. I also want to thank ABN TV and a huge thank you to my producer, Mr. Sheena Ayo. All right, and this is the end of another episode of Health Matters. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope to see you next episode. Bye-bye.